Welcome, everybody, to the Sheridan Report on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The Sheridan Report is brought to you by BetDSI.eu. To get a 100% cash back bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000, make sure you go check out BetDSI.eu, put in the promo code TGT, or go to the GruelingTruth.com page, click on the banner at the top of that page, use the promo code TGT. I am your co-host for the Sheridan Report, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Bobby Sheridan. How you doing, Bobby?
Hey, good morning, Mike, and I'm doing great. And baseball is driving the bus now, as you and I have talked about. And yesterday, in the first day of only baseball, we hit 4 of our 6 selections, 2 of our 3 straights, and nailed our top plays. So not a bad first start. And we got a 3-team parlay today, paying 3.5 to 1, and we got a 6-game sweep of the card, paying 55 to 1. So let's see if either one of those we can bring home.
All right, Bobby. So I guess we're starting off with baseball, and then we will finish with On This Day, where we'll talk a little boxing. Tommy Hearns, Hearns-Duran, Michael Spinks, Jerry Cooney. So go ahead and get us started off on the baseball, Bobby.
All right, well, here's your 3.5 to 1 part. This is your 3-team mix and match. We're going to start off with the Giants at 105 Pacific. This is a afternoon slate of games, a few of these. And we got Madison Bumgarner on the mound over Jimmy Nelson. Giants don't look now, but they're playing good baseball. They took 2 out of 3 at home versus the Padres. They took 2 out of 3 before that against the Dodgers. And they took Milwaukee yesterday on game 1 of that series. That was one of our losers. We were 4-2 yesterday. That was one of our losers. So the Giants are playing well. They got Bumgarner on the mound today. I like them. They're a very small favorite. Now, that gives us an opportunity. I like to stay in that 3.5, 4, 4.5 to 1 range on this 3-teamer. Gives us an opportunity to put the Nationals in. Nationals had a big win yesterday. They've been getting some good pitching performances, and Steven Strasburg, I think, will follow that up. Huge pitching mismatch in this game. He's minus 225, but we stick him in with only minus 105, the Giants. That's still not bad. And we'll finish it with the Rockies. And this was a crazy game yesterday. The Rockies, if you don't know, had an 11-5 lead going into the 9th. It was 11-4, actually, after 8, or going into the 8th. So 6-run 9th for the Padres. They tie it, and they win it in the 11th or 12th. This is game 2. And actually game 3. This series opened up Thursday. So it's 1-1. And the Rockies are throwing their ace, Herman Marquez, to the mound against Eric Lauer. And I think the Rockies, especially coming off of that game, I think this will be a good spot for them to finish it off. So the Rockies, the Giants, 2 National League West teams, and then the Nationals. That'll be our 3-teamer. Now, okay, here's your 3 straight plays. I'll save the top bet for last. So let me pull up this one. Okay, we got the Pirates. And if you followed along, we really like the Pirates when they face a right-hander. So there's a check mark there. Pablo Lopez is right-handed. I like the Marlins when they play in the National League East. So Pirates are not in the East, and I like the price, the plus 115. Why are we getting the price? Because the Pirates are throwing first start Dario Agrazal. And reports are good. I'm going to bet on their offense today. And so I'm going to go ahead and take the plus 125 with the Pirates. Next up will be our biggest dog of the day, plus 172. And we hit that exact same number last night with the Mariners. Let's see if we can go right back at it again and improving Yu Darvish going back to Los Angeles. Pitch against the Dodgers, Walker Buehler. I understand the line. I understand the line being maybe the Dodgers 160-ish, something like that, but it's 182. They just never lose, so I can understand that. But the Cubs, a playoff team, prideful group, I think behind Yu Darvish, they got to definitely have a shot to get this to the second game tied or with the lead. And that second game involves the Dodger bullpen before Jansen. So if you heard me talk about that's the best chance to beat them. And I think this matchup will give them that opportunity. So plus 172, we might be sitting in good position late in that game. And let's see if we can just make Jansen a non-factor tonight. That would be very nice. So we can just keep him out of the ball game tonight. And then the top play, Mike, is the Texas Rangers. And that's Mike Minor. You're getting plus 110 on the road at Cincinnati. This is a interleague matchup where the Rangers had some really good at-bats yesterday and are getting some good at-bats from their left-handed hitters. So, therefore, I think this could be a bad matchup for Tanner Roark, who's all of a sudden given up 8 runs in his last 11 innings. So this is a pretty decided starting pitching matchup in favor of Mike Minor of the Rangers, who continues to just pitch really, really well. So really like this game, Mike. This would be my top play, my best bet. The Rangers plus 110 at Great American Ballpark. And that's your baseball, Mike.
Hopefully it'll be playing because the weather is not great in the city of Cincinnati right now. All right, Bobby, what do you want to start off with on this day?
All right, Mike, we got two. You mentioned them. Let's start off with 1984. 84 was a great year. Thomas Hearns against Roberto Duran. Wow, two legends.
Yeah, and at the time, I don't think the storylines for this fight had become that vivid. You know, we've got the term now, the Four Kings, talking about Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, and Duran. That wasn't coined at that point. And Tommy Hearns was a fighter that was more defined by his two great defeats to Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard. But a Hagler-Hearns fight had been talked about up to this point. And the thing that was interesting here is there was no real buzz for what would become a super fight later on. And this fight is what caused that to be a super fight, because you had Roberto Duran, who had went down to a inglorious setback when he quit against Sugar Ray Leonard after winning the first fight. He had turned his career around. He'd come back. He beat Davey Moore at Madison Square Garden on his birthday, which was a huge upset because everybody thought he was done. Davey Moore was the up-and-coming guy, and Moore was supposed to beat him. He didn't. Now, after the Davey Moore win, he gets a shot against Marvelous Marvin Hagler in November of 1983. And nobody gives him a shot to win that fight. And he didn't win that fight. But what he did is he became the first guy during Hagler's reign to go the entire 15 rounds with him, and he actually gave him a hell of a fight. So that's what caused Hearns-Duran to all of a sudden become a huge fight. Now, it wasn't what I would call a super fight at the time, but it was damn close. And the problem with Duran was, when he did well, he had a tendency to, let's say, not really take care of himself out of the ring, kind of a party animal. That reemerged with a vengeance after the Duran Moore and the Duran Hagler fights. And he was in a mood to celebrate, and after months of training and restraint, Duran actually hired his own personal orchestra to tour with him around Latin America so he could sing, dance, and carouse night after night. The adulation of his fans, of course, made it even worse, and he didn't really train hard at all for this fight, and he entered training camp for the Hearns fight with a great reluctance, and he had to lose a ton of weight. I mean, he had to lose like 40 or 50 pounds in 6 or 7 weeks to make this fight. Now, in stark contrast, this was a huge fight for Hearns because his biggest fight, he'd lost to Leonard. He had beaten Wilfred Benitez, I think, towards the end of 82 or 83. And he sparred in this fight. And the thing that I saw was Emmanuel Stewart, who was one of the greatest trainers of all time, said that this was the greatest training camp any of these fighters ever had. And I know I read a book that was written by Pete Hamill where Emmanuel Stewart said this. I mean, Tommy Hearns was training with Mark Breland, Pernell Whitaker, Frank Tate, which were all Olympic champions, or at least silver medalists, I think, with Tate. And he was training with world champions Milton McCrory and Mike McCallum. And Stewart in that book said it was one of the best training camps in boxing history. So, thus, in retrospect, what transpired on that June night in Las Vegas is not that shocking. And it was, Hearns was a deadly puncher. They called him the Hitman. And when Duran came into the ring that night, and you can go back and you watch the fight on YouTube or wherever you can find it, when Duran came into the ring, he looked like a man making his last steps to go sit in the damn electrocutioner's chair. He looked like he was going to his death, and he damn near did, because Tommy Hearns destroyed Roberto Duran on that night. And the thing that makes this so big was the fact that with Hearns destroying Duran in 2 rounds, like 7, 8 months after Hagler struggled with Duran, is what made what would happen a year later in 1985 outdoors in Caesar Palace, the fight between Hagler Hearns, a super fight. And if you watch that fight, there's no doubt it's one of the greatest fights in boxing history. The first round is maybe the greatest round in boxing history. And the thing that made that fight so big to begin with was Tommy Hearns destroying Roberto Duran, who'd given Marvin Hagler so much trouble, not too far before that. So this fight, it looks like 2 legends. One of them knocked the other one out. But what this did is this set up a year later one of the biggest super fights in boxing history.
Oh, Mike, and what about, that would have been kind of easy money betting Thomas Hearns that night. Had you known going in that he was
and I'm
prepared.
Sure people knew, and I'm sure there's people that made money off of it, but I think Hearns was only like a 3-1 favorite, 2-1 favorite in the fight.
Yeah, it probably wasn't huge, and it my little notes here, it says that was the first time that Duran had ever been knocked out.
Yeah, I don't remember him being, let's see, he got knocked out by William Joppy, but he was like 47 fighting for the middleweight title. There weren't too many guys that knocked him out. And the thing about Duran is, after this fight in 1984, like 2 or 3 years later, 86 or 87, he actually moved up another weight class and beat Iran Barkley for the super middleweight champion of the world. And he actually maneuvered himself into a 3rd fight with Sugar Ray Leonard, where he quit in that fight. He just didn't tell anybody. He just sleptwalked through 12 rounds. I think that was in 1990. And then to make things even bigger is he gets pay-per-view fights against Hector Camacho, Vinny Pazienza, loses some close decisions there, gets the final shot at Joppy. But in between that, Roberto Duran at like the age of 45 goes to Argentina and upsets Jorge Castro, who was the #1 fighter in the world at that time. So it was just when Roberto Duran wanted to be great, there weren't too many people better. But when he was happy with life, about anybody could beat him. I mean, he lost to a guy by the name of Kirkland Lang. And if you go back even to before Davey Moore, after the Leonard fight, he got a shot against Wilfred Benitez. He was lackluster there, got dominated by Benitez over 15 rounds. And if you remember, Arguello and Pryor fought a super fight at the Miami Orange Bowl in 1982, one of the greatest fights of all time. I think it was November of 82. And Roberto Duran fought Jimmy Batten on that card. And Jimmy Batten's a nondescript guy. But this was fought in Miami, Florida, and it was the walkout bout. It wasn't even important enough to be before it. And the thing is, almost everybody stayed at the Orange Bowl to watch Roberto Duran because you had a huge Latin American contingency there. You had from Nicaragua, Alexis Arguello, who was fighting Aaron Pryor. You're fighting in Miami. And Duran was so bad in that fight that by the time you got halfway through the fight, the Orange Bowl was empty, and Roberto Duran's fighting in front of maybe 3,000 people in an 80,000-seat stadium.
Oh, wow. Yeah. What a guy, what a fighter, what a career. Jeez.
Yeah. And I would like to bring up, if Steve Risley's listening, you can't Google that.
No, you can't Google that, Mike.
All right, you want to talk about Spinks and Cooney too, right?
Yeah, I want to transition. Now we're going to go 3 years forward to 87. That's our graduation year, right, Mike? High school.
Yeah, this was June 15th of 87, which was like 3 or 4 weeks before I went to college. And I remember I went to see this fight at the Drawbridge Inn in Northern Kentucky with my dad. It was a few weeks before, we were going to go, or I was going to go to Indiana State. And I remember going there. I was extremely excited. I love Jerry Cooney. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm white, so I like Jerry Cooney, just like black people Floyd Mayweather. This is the thing. Boxing is very tribal, and I don't have a problem with that. But there's a lot of black fighters that I loved. I loved Marvin Hagler, Michael Spinks. So that's what made this fight tough, because Spinks is fighting Cooney. And the backstory here was Spinks was stripped of the IBF heavyweight title in February of 1987 for refusing to fight IBF number one contender Tony Tucker. What happened was HBO had put together a heavyweight unification tournament. And this had Mike Tyson, Trevor Berbick, Pinklon Thomas, all these guys in it. It would eventually have James Buster Douglas because Buster Douglas took Michael Spinks' place in the tournament, fought Tony Tucker, quit during the fight, which we talked about back in the day a few weeks ago, and Don King won the right to promote a Spinks-Tucker fight with a title purse bid of $711,000. Now, in the case of a purse bid is basically divided 75% to 25% in favor of the champion. That would mean $533,000 for Spinks. Now, he's offered $533,000 to fight, Tony Tucker. Instead of fighting Spinks, though, he fights Jerry Cooney. The difference is this: Jerry Cooney is marketable. He's a big white heavyweight that can punch. And Spinks ended up giving up his title because he was getting $4 million to fight Jerry Cooney. Cooney was making a guaranteed $2.5 million. Spinks was still the lineal world heavyweight champion, and if anybody out there doesn't know what that is, you'll hear Tyson Fury talking about it when he's going to fight tonight. But he is the man who beat the man, because Michael Spinks beat Larry Holmes. So to me, when people say that Mike Tyson was the youngest heavyweight champion of all time, it's just not true, because Michael Spinks was the true heavyweight champion in 1986 when Mike Tyson beat Trevor Berbick. So I don't think that Mike Tyson became that true heavyweight champion until he beat Michael Spinks. So that's what lineal heavyweight champion is. That's the man who beat the man. Now, this fight was a fight that Cooney had been out of the ring for 13 months. He had fought just 3 times since the Cooney losing to Holmes in June of 1982 that we talked about. Cooney was actually an 8-5 favorite. Cooney was knocked down twice in the 5th round. The thing that was interesting is I had Jerry Cooney on the Legends of Boxing show like 2 years ago. Great guy. The interesting thing is he's great friends with everybody that beat the hell out of him. Larry Holmes, Michael Spinks, George Foreman. But the problem was Cooney had a little bit of a drinking problem before the Holmes fight. After he lost the Holmes fight, he kind of went off the rails. He was drinking. He actually went into the ring the night he fought Michael Spinks, and he had been drinking when he went into the ring. And it was a competitive fight. Cooney was actually winning on one card. I think it was even on the other. Spinks was up by 2 points on another card. And it was a pretty even fight for the first 4 rounds. And then in the 5th round, Spinks just hit him with a combination, and Cooney went down, lost the fight. I would still have liked to see this Spinks against Mike Tyson, because I think this Spinks would have done more than get knocked out in 90 seconds. I don't know that Michael Spinks at any time could have beaten Mike Tyson just because of the size difference, but Michael Spinks was a greater fighter than Mike Tyson would ever be, and I think that's unquestioned, because Spinks ended his career on this night with a record of 31-1. He was basically the light heavyweight champion from 1980 through 1985, and that's at a time when the light heavyweight division was probably the deepest it ever was for talented fighters. He'd won a super fight against Dwight Braxton in 1983, which Dwight Braxton later would become Dwight Muhammad Qawi, and 3 or 4 years later after that went life or death in Atlanta, Georgia against Evander Holyfield in his first title fight in the cruiserweight division in a 15-round fight. So that's my Spinks Cooney recollections. And then Cooney actually, after this fight, retired for 2 or 3 years, and then he got back with Gil Clancy. If you remember Gil Clancy, had seen Jerry Cooney in the New York State Athletic Commission's Golden Gloves, where Cooney won 5 straight New York State Golden Gloves, which was a huge deal at that time. Very few fighters ever won a New York City Golden Gloves that many times. And for younger people, the New York State Golden Gloves used to be held at Madison Square Garden, and it was sold out every night, 20,000 people. You had great fighters there all the time, guys like Mike McCallum, Alex Ramos, who we wrote an article about. We always talk about the Retired Boxers Foundation on the Inside Boxing Daily Show. So Jerry Cooney could legitimately fight. If you don't think he could, go watch him in 1982 against a prime Larry Holmes. Jerry Cooney would beat the shit out of any heavyweight fight in the day. So would Michael Spinks, for that matter. And the sad thing is, all these younger people get all caught up in this, and these fights are shit that we see today compared to what we saw back in the day. Facebook, we put up great fights. We're going to have tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern, George Foreman versus Ron Lau, which is one of the greatest heavyweight fights of all time. You watch that, and then you tell me the difference between that and what you see nowadays. You can also go on the Facebook page, find Holyfield Bo. We'll have all three Ali Fraziers up there within the next month or so. But boxing's not nearly what it used to be. And when you watch guys like these, or even talk about them, Tommy Hearns would have killed anything around today. So that's my Spinks Cooney.
Well, what's around today is going on tonight. And Fury is minus 2150. You get plus 13 to 1 on Schwartz, but it's almost a fight you can barely even watch, let alone bet it.
Yeah, I'll watch it just because it's what I do, and I always have, and I can't help myself.
Right.
And I'll be watching boxing from the time we get off today because DAZN's got, cruiserweight title fights on. And then there's boxing from England with a fight between Kid Galahad and Josh Warrington. And then I'll watch the boxing tonight. So I'll spend the next 10 hours watching it. And during most of those 10 hours, I'm going to sit there and point out to my sons that what I saw was infinitely better than the shit they're getting to see.
Yeah. And I had a question. This was 87 when Spinks beat Cooney. When did Spinks fight Tyson? 88?
Spinks fought Tyson, I think it was like a year later.
Like a year later? Okay.
Spinks' knees were going to hell. And I've told the story before, and I've talked to Michael before. We're going to have him on a Legends show here, hopefully this year sometime. But he used to run in boots, army boots all the time, and it just destroyed his knees. Cooney actually got with Gil Clancy to finish that story because I got off at a tangent, as I so often do. And he actually came back, got in unbelievable shape, and fought George Foreman in 1990. And this was the fight before Foreman fought Holyfield. And I remember they called this like two geezers at Caesars. And it was actually, it's only a 2-round fight, but Cooney just drilled Foreman in the first round. And they asked Foreman about it after the fight, and he said, Cooney has harder than any man I've ever hit or fought with. And he said, after he hit me with that in the first round, he said, I knew I had to get this dude out of the ring because I didn't want to have to get hit like that anymore. So the good thing is Jerry Cooney turned his entire life around. He beat the alcoholism. He beat his demons. And he's a great guy now that does a lot of philanthropy and goes around and helps out a lot of organizations and a lot of former boxers. So in the end, Jerry Cooney turned out all right. And in the end, Michael Spinks turned out all right because Michael Spinks knew when to quit. He knew when to say when. He got his big money against Cooney, Holmes. He got the big money against Braxton, the big money against Mike Tyson. And he got the hell out. And he got out with all of his faculties. And to see the difference between him and Leon Spinks, his brother, just tells you the difference between not taking care of your money, not taking care of your body, partying all the time, and pissing your money away. Because Leon was fighting when he was in his 40s, almost 50 years old. And now Leon, when you look at him, Leon's not all there anymore. Michael, on the other hand, is doing great. So it kind of tells you the difference between hanging around too long and not hanging around too long. And the big difference there was Michael Spinks just took care of himself and his money. Leon beat Muhammad Ali and just kind of went off the rails and never got back on.
Yeah, that's sad. But Michael probably learned from his brother, and did things right.
Yeah. All right. I want to remind you, if you bet on the horses, the handicapping guide with Phil Rankin. Make sure you check it out halfway down on the Grueling Truth page on the right-hand side. Check out the Sheridan Report at Sheridan Report on Twitter, thesheridanreport.com on the internet. Also, go check out the Retired Boxers Foundation with Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos. They're on Facebook. They do a lot to help out boxers that are destitute, have problems right now. So make sure you check them out also. If you're going to bet the fights tonight or you want to bet a little Major League Baseball and make some money with Bobby today, make sure you go to betdsi.eu, use the promo code TGT, or click the banner on the Grueling Truth at the top of the page. But definitely use the banner, or click on the banner and use the promo code TGT. If you want to help us out at The Grueling Truth with the videos we post on Facebook, the articles you get to see, these shows, you can go to thegruelingtruth.com. A little bit down on the right-hand side, you'll see the little donate button through PayPal. I don't care if you can give $1, $5, $10, anything you can give helps us immensely to be able to keep our independence and to not sell out like so many of these sports websites have. So make sure you go down and you check that out. All right, Bobby, we're going to wrap it up. We'll be back Monday to talk a little baseball, a little on this day. Make sure you are here with us. So you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcasts. You'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for Bobby Sheridan, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.